guys, I don't know if you've seen this, but there's a lot of discourse online about what kind of game you should make and how to be successful as an indie developer. There's plenty of articles from blogs like howtomarketagame.com about what kind of genres do well on Steam, and that can make it seem like there are some developers that will succeed and some that will fail, and that those developers are determined based on what genre of game you're making. Today I want to play the contrarian and give a little bit of insight into how that might not be true in all cases. I think what's left out of this conversation is that there is one important quality that all successful indie developers share, without fail. And I want to talk about that today and kind of put it all in context, because as much as I love to talk about genre and scope and execution, I think that there's one quality that just has to exist as a baseline, and if it doesn't, then you will not succeed as an indie developer, and I want to share that with you guys today. To start, what we should look at is what are qualities that all unsuccessful indie devs share. Now, I'm going to make a claim here, and if I'm wrong about this, then please leave a comment below. I don't think I've ever seen an unsuccessful indie developer who has shipped more than 3 games on Steam. What I'm getting at here is this idea that developers who are successful are just the ones who stick at it for long enough, meaning they might make 1, 2, or 3 games and then learn from their mistakes and get better at it over time. And while you can't predict whether you're going to be successful in any given field, you can look at the pattern of all of the people who are unsuccessful and try not to replicate those mistakes. And the biggest takeaway I get from doing that is that unsuccessful devs don't ship. It might seem pretty obvious, but there's a lot of uncertainty in the game dev world, and it's really easy to convince yourself that your game might not be successful. But when you look at the pattern of which developers are successful and which ones aren't, it's very rare that a developer's first game becomes a huge hit or becomes something that actually turns a profit for them. And the converse is true. It's very rare that a developer creates 10 games on Steam that are all high quality and commercially viable, and none of them are successful. If you're feeling like game dev is unapproachable and success is this giant mountain that you're never going to reach the top of, the thing that keeps me going as someone who has not had a commercial success so far is that eventually you learn from your mistakes, you make better games, and you reach the point where you can make a success. Every industry, game dev included, works like a giant funnel. And at the top of the funnel, there's a bunch of people who are just interested in game dev, dabbling with it, learning tools, maybe making their first commercial game. And at the bottom are industry veterans who are making successful games consistently and have been doing it for 20 plus years. And as you move down the funnel, more and more people stop being in this industry. And so developers that release 1 game and then quit are very common, and developers that make 5 games, 6 games, 7 games are increasingly rare, because being mindful of this can be really powerful for keeping yourself motivated and being hopeful about your future. If you're working on something that you don't feel like will work out eventually, it will be impossible to stick with it and get to the point where it does work out. A lot of people get themselves to the point where they're successful by gaslighting themselves with delusions of grandeur and imagining, oh, this game's going to be huge. Some people get themselves to success by just enjoying the process and forgetting about success entirely. If you're someone who's generally neurotic like I am, it can be really easy to get lost in the cloud of all the things you need to do to get to the point where you're going to be successful without seeing the bigger picture, which is that most devs who stick with it end up finding success in some way throughout their career. I think mindfulness of how this industry and most industries work is really important. The great thing about being an independent developer is that you're the captain of your own ship, so it's harder for forces outside of your control to take you down that aren't of your own design. You can make a bad game or not appeal to your target audience, and those things would ultimately be within your control. You're at very little risk of your entire project being cut from higher ups in corporate. The thing that brings me a great deal of peace while working in this industry is that the only way to guarantee that you fail is to stop making games. What really inspires me is looking at the history of people like Edmund McMillan or John Romero, who have made 50 games throughout the course of their careers. And these are also people who are driven by ideas, driven by creativity, and driven by the intrinsic joy that comes from making games rather than the need to prove themselves. And the foundation for consistency, the foundation for success, is to some extent detachment from the emotional impact of the results of your release. So if I work on a game for an entire year and I am stressed about whether it's going to make money, and I'm feeling like, oh, if this game doesn't make money, then I'm a failure, then the stakes of what you're doing are so much higher and burnout is so much more likely. Because if your game isn't successful, it's not just that you tried something and it didn't work, it's that you are a failure. And if you're thinking is so catastrophic, how are you going to pick yourself up and make another game? As indie devs, we put too high stakes on individual releases, and we focus less on valuing full careers and consistency. And this can create burnout because we start to associate our egos with individual game releases, which is a recipe for failure, because if you can't keep making games, you will never have that hit. You'll never have that successful game. I think if you inverse this, it's also a problem. If we valorize people who have made one successful game and ignore people who have made long careers out of being independent developers, then we tend to have a mindset where we think that that's the only way to be successful, and we tend to value our individual releases more than our long careers as game developers. I think celebrating these meteoric indie success games like Balatro, Stardew Valley, Animal Well sets indie devs up to think that if they make one game and it's not a success, then they are a failure, which is not a good foundation for consistency, which is the real foundation for success. So if you're an indie developer, those are 2 action items for you. 1, fall in love with your process and don't worry so much about the outcome. It's not a reflection of your value as a person, and don't identify with your game being successful. Stop saying things like, I am going to be a successful indie developer. At the end of the day, there's only one thing that you can do to guarantee that, which is continue making games. And that's going to be really hard if every single time a game doesn't succeed, you're going to see yourself as a failure. And secondly, stop idolizing developers who have had single hits and start looking at developers who have had long careers. Reframe your goals. Don't set the benchmark of what a successful indie developer is as someone who has shipped a single game that has been successful. Instead, look longer term. Think about successful developers as people who have had careers making successful games, or careers making unsuccessful ones, or careers that are spotted, like 1 success and then 5 failures and then 1 success and then 5 failures. Those are the people you really want to emulate, because at the end of the day, even if you do have one big successful hit game and you bring home, let's say, $300,000 from it, which is a lot, then that money is not going to last you for the rest of your life. You're going to have to keep making games if you want to keep making money. So as tempting as it is, resist the urge to make your dream game, because implicit in the assumption that there's one game that is your dream game is the idea that you're only going to make one game. I've talked to a lot of indie developers, and most of them tend to be earlier in their career, and nobody has ever spent 25 to 35 years making a single game. So stop seeing indie games as a space to make your dream game and start seeing it as a space to make a series of games that may or may not be successful, and take joy in that process. Take joy in the process of making and shipping games and making other people happy. There are many things in life that only come to you when you stop seeking them, and in my opinion, I think success is one of those things. Take this with a grain of salt, because I'm not a person who has seen in my life success from indie games, but it's my goal. And how I define success is through a series of games throughout my career, rather than just a single hit. I hope this video was helpful for you if you are a game dev who's thinking about the philosophy of making games and struggling with motivation maybe. I make lots of videos like this on my channel, so if you're interested in stuff like this, then make sure to subscribe. And I'm working on a game right now called Deck Terra. It's a 4X deck building game, and if you're interested in games like Balatro or Civilization, check it out on Steam. I've also got a link to my Discord server, so if you want to chat with me in the community about topics like this, be sure to join us on there. That's it for the plugs. All right. Thanks, guys. See you next week.